Have you ever walked away from a conversation with a woman feeling confused, but unable to explain why? Maybe everything sounded normal on the surface, maybe her words seemed harmless, yet something deep inside told you that something wasn't right. Most men ignore that feeling, and that's exactly where they make their biggest mistake. Because contrary to what many people believe, relationships rarely collapse because of one dramatic event. They usually fall apart because of warning signs that appeared long before the damage became visible. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some women reveal exactly who they are through the things they say, not through their actions months later, not after years of disappointment, but through specific phrases that expose hidden attitudes, emotional patterns, and relationship intentions. Most men never realize this. They hear the words but miss the psychology behind them. That's why intelligent, successful, and experienced men often find themselves trapped in relationships they never should have entered. The problem isn't that the warning signs weren't there. The problem is that they didn't know how to recognize them. Now, before we continue, this isn't about attacking women. Far from it. There are incredible women in the world, loyal women, honest women, emotionally mature women, but female psychology, like human psychology in general, leaves clues. And when you understand those clues, you stop judging people by what you hope they mean and start paying attention to what they actually reveal. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Imagine meeting a woman who seems perfect. She's attractive, confident, funny. The chemistry feels effortless. Then she casually says something that most men would completely ignore. A single sentence, just a few words, nothing dramatic. Yet hidden inside that statement is a prediction of future conflict, emotional manipulation, disrespect, or instability. What happens next may surprise you. The men who recognize the warning sign immediately protect themselves. The men who don't often spend months or years learning the lesson the hard way. And here's where it gets interesting. The first phrase we're about to discuss isn't obvious at all. In fact, many men interpret it as confidence. Some even see it as attractive. But psychologists understand that it can reveal something much deeper and far more dangerous. A mindset that quietly destroys trust before a relationship even begins. And once you understand what this phrase really means, you'll never hear it the same way again. Because the first warning sign isn't just a red flag. It's often the beginning of a pattern, and the psychology behind it is something most men have never been taught. So, what is this phrase? And why does it instantly change how an experienced man views a relationship? That's exactly what we'll uncover next. The first phrase that should immediately make you pay attention is surprisingly simple. I get bored easily. At first glance, it doesn't sound dangerous. In fact, many men hear this and think it means she's adventurous, spontaneous, or exciting. But here's what most men never realize this phrase can reveal. It often has very little to do with boredom, and a lot to do with emotional instability. Now, let's be clear, everyone gets bored sometimes. That's normal. The problem isn't occasional boredom. The problem is when someone constantly needs external stimulation to feel satisfied. Because relationships are not movies. They're not endless vacations. They're not a constant stream of excitement and emotional highs. Real relationships include routine, consistency, predictability, and mature people understand that. But here's where it gets interesting. A woman who repeatedly says she gets bored easily may be telling you that she struggles to create happiness internally. Instead, she depends on circumstances, people, attention, drama, or novelty to generate emotional excitement. And that can become incredibly dangerous inside a relationship. Imagine this scenario. You meet a woman and everything feels amazing during the first few months. The conversations are exciting. The attraction is intense. Every date feels like an adventure. Then life becomes normal. Work gets busy. Schedules become predictable. The relationship settles into a healthy rhythm. For emotionally mature people, this is where deeper connection begins. For someone addicted to excitement, this is where dissatisfaction starts. Suddenly, she feels restless. She starts creating unnecessary conflict. Minor issues become major arguments. Problems appear where none existed before, not because the relationship is failing, but because emotional drama temporarily relieves boredom. What happens next may surprise you. Many men blame themselves. They think, maybe I'm not exciting enough. Maybe I need to do more. Maybe I need to become someone else. And that's exactly the trap, because no matter how much effort you make, you can never permanently entertain someone who depends on constant stimulation. The problem wasn't your effort, the problem was the psychological pattern. Now, here's the deeper insight. Psychologists often observe that people who constantly chase excitement can also struggle with long term commitment. Why? Because commitment requires patience, it requires emotional discipline, it requires finding value in stability. Someone who is always searching for the next emotional high may eventually start associating comfort with boredom, and boredom with failure. That creates a cycle where healthy relationships begin feeling wrong simply because they are peaceful. Pay close attention because this changes everything. The issue isn't whether a woman enjoys excitement, most people do. The issue is whether she can appreciate peace, because a woman who cannot enjoy peace will eventually create chaos. And chaos is exhausting, but that's only the beginning. The second phrase is even more revealing. Unlike the first warning sign, this one sounds innocent. Many men actually mistake it for honesty. Yet hidden inside it is one of the strongest predictors of future relationship problems. And once you hear it, you'll understand why experienced men immediately take notice. Now we arrive at a phrase that sounds completely reasonable on the surface. In fact, many men hear it and immediately feel sympathy. The phrase is, all my exes were toxic. At first, that statement may seem believable. After all, everyone can end up with the wrong person once or twice. Bad relationships happen. Manipulative people exist. Some breakups genuinely aren't your fault. But here's where it gets interesting. When someone claims that every former partner was toxic, abusive, controlling, narcissistic, immature, selfish, or crazy, a different question begins to emerge. What is the common denominator? Most men never ask this question. Instead, they immediately accept the story. And that's understandable. Nobody wants to appear insensitive. Nobody wants to challenge someone's painful experiences. But mature thinking requires looking deeper than emotional narratives. Because psychology teaches us something important. Patterns matter. If one relationship fails, that could be bad luck. If two relationships fail, perhaps unfortunate circumstances played a role. But when every former partner is described as the villain, something else may be happening. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Emotionally mature people are usually capable of self-reflection. Even after painful breakups, they might say, he wasn't right for me. We both made mistakes. We wanted different things. There were things I could have handled better. Notice the difference. There's accountability, there's balance, there's awareness. Now compare that to someone who never accepts any responsibility. In every story, they're the victim. Every ex was terrible. Every conflict was someone else's fault. Every disappointment was caused by another person. What happens next may surprise you. This mindset often follows people into future relationships. Because if someone cannot recognize their role in previous problems, they have little reason to change future behavior. And that creates a dangerous situation for the next partner. You. Imagine dating a woman who blames every former boyfriend for everything that went wrong. At first, you feel special, different, better than the others. You think, I would never treat her that way. But months later, when conflict inevitably appears, something unexpected happens. The same blame pattern emerges again. Now you're the insensitive one. You're the problem. You're the reason she's unhappy. And suddenly you realize something disturbing. The stories she told about her exes may not have been completely objective. This doesn't mean her former partners were innocent. That's not the point. The real issue is whether she's capable of honest self-assessment, because healthy relationships require two people who can say, I made mistakes too. Without that ability, growth becomes nearly impossible. But here's the deeper psychological layer most men overlook. A person who constantly externalizes blame often struggles with accountability in other areas as well. And accountability is one of the foundations of trust. Without it, every disagreement becomes a battle. Every problem becomes your responsibility. Every conflict becomes your fault. And that's a relationship dynamic that can drain even the strongest man. But we're not finished. The next warning sign is far more subtle. Unlike the first two, it doesn't sound negative at all. In fact, many men find it incredibly flattering. That's exactly why it's so dangerous, because hidden behind this phrase is a psychological trap that has destroyed countless relationships before they ever had a chance to succeed. And once you recognize it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. The third phrase doesn't sound like a red flag, it sounds like a dream. In fact, many men hear it and instantly feel chosen, special, and different from every other man she has ever met. The phrase is, "I've never met a man like you before." Now, could this statement be genuine? Absolutely. But here's where experienced men become cautious, because context matters a lot. If you've known her for months and built a real connection, the statement may reflect sincere admiration. But if you've only known her for a short time, something else may be happening. Psychologists call this idealization. It's the process of placing someone on a pedestal before truly knowing them. And while it feels amazing at first, it often creates a hidden problem. Because when someone idealizes you, they aren't seeing the real you. They're seeing a fantasy version of you, the version they want to believe exists. And fantasies eventually collide with reality. What happens next may surprise you. The same person who praises you excessively today may become deeply disappointed tomorrow, not because you changed, but because you failed to live up to the image they created in their own mind. This creates a dangerous cycle. First comes admiration, then unrealistic expectations, then disappointment, then criticism. And many men never understand why the relationship changed so quickly. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Healthy attraction grows gradually. Emotionally mature people become impressed over time. They don't usually make grand declarations before genuine trust has been established. Now let's move to the fourth phrase. This one is even more subtle, and it's often disguised as confidence. The phrase is, "If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best." You've probably heard this before, maybe on social media, maybe in real life, maybe from someone you dated. At first, it sounds empowering, almost inspirational. But here's where it gets interesting. Healthy adults take responsibility for their behavior. They don't ask others to tolerate endless disrespect, emotional volatility, or toxic actions. They acknowledge their flaws and actively work on improving them. This phrase can sometimes signal the opposite. Instead of accountability, it may communicate entitlement. Instead of growth, it may communicate justification. The hidden message becomes, "My behavior is your responsibility to tolerate." And that's a dangerous foundation for any relationship. Imagine trying to solve problems with someone who believes every emotional outburst should simply be accepted. Every disagreement becomes impossible. Every boundary becomes selfish. Every attempt at communication becomes an attack. Over time, the relationship becomes emotionally exhausting. Most men never realize this until they're already deeply invested. By then, leaving feels difficult. That's why recognizing these warning signs early is so important. Not because perfection exists, nobody is perfect, but because accountability separates healthy relationships from destructive ones. And now we arrive at the final warning sign, the most important one, the phrase that quietly predicts more future heartbreak than almost any other. Once you understand the psychology behind it, everything we've discussed so far will suddenly connect. And you'll see why this last lesson may be the most valuable relationship insight you'll ever hear. Now we come to the final warning sign, the one that quietly ties all the others together. The phrase is, "This is just who I am." At first glance, it sounds harmless, maybe even honest. After all, authenticity is important. Being yourself matters. No one should pretend to be someone they're not. But here's where most men completely misunderstand the psychology. There is a huge difference between self-awareness and self-excuse. A self-aware person says, "This is a weakness I'm working on. This is something I need to improve." I know this behavior isn't healthy. A person using identity as an excuse says, "This is just who I am." End of discussion. No growth, no accountability, no responsibility, no desire to change. And that's where the real danger begins. Because every healthy relationship depends on adaptation, every single one. No matter how compatible two people are, there will be disagreements, different perspectives, different habits, different emotional needs. Successful couples learn, adjust, compromise, grow together. But someone who constantly hides behind, "This is just who I am," often rejects growth itself. And without growth, relationships slowly become trapped. Think about everything we've discussed: the woman who gets bored easily, the woman who blames every ex, the woman who idealizes you too quickly, the woman who expects unlimited tolerance for bad behavior. What do all these patterns have in common? A lack of accountability. And accountability is one of the strongest predictors of long term relationship success. Most men focus on beauty, chemistry, charm, excitement, but experienced men pay attention to something deeper: character. Because attraction may start a relationship, character determines whether it survives. Pay close attention because this changes everything. The goal isn't to become paranoid. The goal isn't to judge women harshly. The goal isn't to search for flaws. The goal is to listen carefully, to observe patterns, to pay attention when words consistently reveal attitudes that create unhealthy relationships. A high quality woman is not perfect. She makes mistakes. She has weaknesses. She has insecurities, just like everyone else. The difference is that she takes responsibility for them. She communicates honestly. She reflects on her actions. She grows. And that's exactly why strong relationships become possible. So the next time you're getting to know someone, don't just listen to what she says. Listen to what her words reveal, because sometimes a single sentence can save you months or even years of frustration, confusion, and heartbreak. Most men ignore these clues. Now you won't. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future videos on female psychology, relationship dynamics, attraction, and self-improvement. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 warning signs have you encountered in real life? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help another man avoid a mistake he'll regret for years. Until next time, stay observant, stay confident, and remember, the strongest men aren't the ones who ignore red flags. They're the ones who recognize them before it's too late.